Well, good afternoon again, folks, from Galloway, southwest Scotland in mid-November. Back to the restoration of my 1971 MG Midget. On my last video I had a sort of plan going forward, and as often happens, I abandoned the plan and decided to go with something different. So if you remember, those of you who've been following, I was planning to fit this thing here, which is the inner wheel arch, and hoping that that would allow me to position the suspension and get it square and yeah, and then weld it in place. But so I kind of did that, but the problem is that thing over there is surprisingly heavy, and when you're fitting it in upside down, it just doesn't want to stay in place to weld it in. So so what I did was I got it in and made sure that these seemed to be in the right place, and I marked them, and then I just tack welded the suspension arm in place. Now I need to finish all that off. Obviously it is fixed in, it won't move, but it needs a bit more work just to properly weld it in. So I decided I would abandon putting the inner wheel arches in until I've got the thing back on the rotisserie and I can turn it up the right way. So with that in mind, what I decided to go ahead and do was to finish welding in the inner sills to the footwells. So I did that on both sides, and then I welded in the cross member with the other end of this welded to it, and both legs welded to the cross member. And I dry fitted the floor. It was kind of okay, seemed to be in the right place. I ran the laser down the middle and thought, yeah, that's probably all right. And then I dry fitted the floor again and thought, actually, I don't know if it is. It may be 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch out laterally. So I undid the welds, started again, moved things around, and I've been messing around with this thing for ages, trying to get it right. And what it did tell me, if you remember, I put in a whole cross member. I could have left the original middle section in here and welded a bit on either side of it, but I elected to take the whole thing out, which seemed a smart move, except that obviously the position of the cross member is important in terms of these holes here, which hold the let me get this thing here, which kind of fits underneath here and attaches to the gearbox. And if that's not in the right place, it's going to be a job to get the gearbox in. So anyway, a lot of messing around. I've bolted this thing in place on the cross member. I've moved it around, and I've kind of come up with where I think it should be. I could be slightly out, who knows, but I'm hoping that there's enough tolerance there that, you know, I may need to put a little shim in here and there just to kind of move things around, but hopefully I can get the gearbox. There are sort of pads that fit in here that have got a bit of movement in them, so hopefully when I come to put the gearbox in, the prop shaft will run down the middle where it's supposed to. But that's a worry, and I agonized over it for ages and thought, you know what, I've just got to go for it. So what you may notice is that I've welded the floor in. So eventually I decided to bite the bullet, put the floor in, get it squared up, and I bolted it in place here temporarily, just so that I know it's in the right place. I had to cut a little bit off the front of it because it seemed to be maybe 1/8 of an inch too long, and I thought, is that because I've made a mistake? But chatted with a few people online who said, listen, you know, these things are not perfect, just chop a little bit off, bend it up and make it fit. So that's what I've done, and today I've finished plug welding the floor in place, which I'm delighted with. And actually, I mean, it needs to be ground back clearly, but some of these plug welds look almost half decent, you know, so not, you know, they're not going to win any awards, but they're solid. So I've plug welded that in. I've plug welded in the fronts here. I'm going to trim this and tidy it up in due course. I've plug welded it all along here and plug welded to the rear bulkhead at the back. I then thought, okay, give me a bit of solidity. I'll plug weld the inner sills. So I've managed to get that one done completely, and this one is kind of tacked in place. The kind of process is really not to go from one end to the other, but to skip backwards and forwards and let the thing cool in between times. And as you'll see, I haven't finished it because, as always happens in these situations, I ran out of gas. So I've done all the welding I can do until I get a new gas canister, which will be in a week or so's time when I can go and pick one up. But yeah, so that's where we are. I now have a body that kind of looks like a car. Well, looks like a car to me. My door gaps are good. I've roughly dry fitted the wings and the seam to, and the outer sill, and they seem to line up pretty well. So, and the same on this side. So, fingers crossed, I can, when I get my gas, I'll finish off welding the floor. It's a lot easier doing plug welds horizontally, I have to say, than it is on the vertical, although they don't look too bad. So I think before I fit the outer sills, I'll probably put the thing back on the rotisserie so I can then turn it through 90 degrees and weld in comfort. There should be enough rigidity in it that I'm not going to twist anything out of place, but I'll have a wee think about that before I do it. So yeah, it's kind of finally starting to look a bit more like a body shell. I agonized on what sort of things do I need to do? What am I going to discover I should have done before I put the floor on, you know, that is going to cause me grief. And the main thing I thought was actually fitting the handbrake back in, and the handbrake cable would be a lot easier before I put the floor in. So I bought a new handbrake cable and fitted that. So yeah, so finish off the plug welds on this side, finish off welding around here just to make sure that that's properly in place. Maybe a few more. I haven't welded this section yet because I wanted to make sure it all looked nice and square before I did that. There are some welds that need to go underneath here, but I'll get them from when I turn the thing over. So maybe just a couple more welds along the seams here, just to be sure that it's not all going to suddenly tear off when I put the weight on a rotisserie. And hopefully next time I do a video, it'll be up, it'll be on the rotisserie. I still haven't, I'm going to tidy up here, so I'm going to cut down here and fold that over and close this off, and the same on this side, just to tidy this up. I still haven't bottomed out what's happening at this end, so it's possible I might take this off and open this up to get a proper look at it before I do put it back in the rotisserie. But that's progress at the moment, so I'm really pleased with where we are, and yeah, keep following. If you've watching this for the first time, please subscribe, I've only got a handful of subscribers, but you know, everyone makes me feel a little bit more positive about what I'm doing here. Give me a like, let me know your comments, any thoughts in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.